Welcome back to RBB. In this Reload episode, we will look at a brief history of the pocket pistol holster. And along the way, we may mention a few names you might recognize, so stick with us. While credited as the first pocket pistol in the 16th century, the Queen Anne flintlock-style pistol existed at a time when pistols were rare and far too expensive for anyone other than royalty and the very wealthy. But it wasn't until the beginning of the 18th century where these smaller pocket guns, with the proliferation of gunsmith profession in both America and Europe, that they were becoming affordable enough for the average citizen, who could buy one and drop it into a pocket. Now, the concept of a pocket pistol was not just relegated to a trouser pocket. Over time, these small guns would also be referred to as boot guns, vest pocket guns, and even muff guns, as women were known to keep them in their hand warmers, referred to as a muff. Henry Derringer Jr. began manufacturing an iconic pocket-sized pistol in 1825, like the one that President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated with. Now, in the western U.S. during the 1800s, it was common for a ranch hand, cattle driver, or anyone trying to make a living on the open range who worked outside to have a full-sized revolver accessible in an open-carry holster. But it wasn't usually for gunfights on Main Street. Instead, open carry was to have quick access in case a predatory animal tried to kill your cattle or flock, rather than being forced to run back to your horse or camp to grab your rifle. Likewise, throughout Europe during this time, travelers from one town to the next were at risk of highway robbery by various ne'er-do-wells, rapscallions, and other men of low character. And just like the fixed-blade dagger knife was also a last-ditch weapon carried by many, the pocket handgun was a self-defense tool that one could carry with them throughout their day. As Americans were traveling west in the second half of the 1800s, communities were being created where people with different skill sets could join together for mutual advantage. Carrying a rifle all day in town just didn't make sense, but safety was still on people's minds. And law enforcement wasn't one of the first professions any newly formed town or village had money for, since a tax system or communal funds to pay a sheriff or constable required time to establish. And this is why pistols, including pocket-sized revolvers, were made and sold at a rate of 10 for every one rifle by the late 1800s. But that doesn't mean there was no reason to be armed. There were plenty of ruffians in a city and when one traveled. Being a mindful shopkeeper, town banker, or any one of a number of folks who might want to have protection while going to town and back home, and if troublemakers showed up, it was better to have a discreet pistol than to not have it and need one. So, having a small pistol carried in a gentleman's pocket or even in a lady's purse were many times just as common as a handkerchief. As the century turned to the 1900s, small semi-auto pocket handguns were making inroads that could be carried safely on a loaded chamber, with an external mechanical safety engaged. The new semi-auto concept could hold more rounds and had a flatter profile than a similar revolver when concealed. That is, as long as the safety didn't accidentally disengage. Now, we don't know for sure how many U.S. presidents pocket carried a pistol, but one well-known example was President Teddy Roosevelt, who pocket carried a Fabrique Nationale M1900 pistol everywhere. One suggested reason was that he was the sitting vice president when President William McKinley was assassinated in 1901. Roosevelt subsequently ascended to the presidency, and it was said that from that point on, Roosevelt was rarely more than arm's reach from his pistol, even while sleeping. Sometime later, Roosevelt was in the state of Massachusetts with a friend, where carrying a concealed pistol had recently been made illegal. When Roosevelt was challenged about carrying the pistol there, he replied, "They got McKinley. They are not going to get me without a fight." Throughout this time, the need for a holster inside the pocket to ensure that the trigger was protected became more common. Early pocket holsters were simple cardboard cutouts or two pieces of leather sewn together. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt often carried a .38 revolver when traveling to promote her president husband's agenda. She was also considered a good shot and enjoyed target practice with her .22 caliber target revolver. And she maintained her concealed carry permit in the state of New York well into the late 1950s. Even Dwight D. Eisenhower, while he was the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces during World War II, would pocket carry a short-barreled revolver in his pocket when he met with the troops in Europe. American generals had the choice of carrying a firearm or not, and while some carried openly, Eisenhower preferred to carry concealed. President Ronald Reagan was known to carry a snub-nosed revolver in his briefcase both as a governor of California and occasionally as the U.S. president. And fast forward to today, if we are going to examine modern pocket pistols, we can say that they come in two distinct flavors. Those that just hold the gun in place while protecting the trigger guard from unintentional discharge, and the other that does all of that and completely breaks up the gun's contours, which could print through the outer clothing. Now, some find carrying a pocket holster to be their best option, but to be honest, I'm not one of them, and that's because I carry a fair amount of EDC gear every day and don't like to give up a whole pocket just for a gun. I'd much rather carry a small pistol on a belt holster. But for those times when you have to go more formal, like shirt tucked in and no covering garment, or during the heat of summer when we're not wearing enough clothing to conceal a belt holster well, or any other situation where my normal modes of carry concealed just isn't going to work, I like to have a solid pocket holster around for odd situations. Of course, there are some advantages to the pocket holster concept. Whether in pants or a coat pocket, the user can get a grip on the gun in unknown and tense moments without drawing much attention to themselves, whereas putting a hand on a gun located somewhere on the waist can look suspicious or even threatening. And this leads us to some of the downsides of pocket carry. Not all guns work equally well in a pocket. Anything that sticks out from the gun, the hammer, tall sights, wide safeties, and extended magazines can make the gun harder to conceal or even pull out of the pocket. If choosing to carry a pocket holster in jeans, pants, or shorts, having to draw from a sitting position can be a timely process. Yes, it can be done, but it may take some body contortions which can draw attention if trying to do so discreetly. On this topic, I have found that pants and slacks with diagonal cut front pocket openings are usually easier to access when seated than horizontal front pockets like those typically found on jeans. And as mentioned, having a pocket holster means one less pocket for anything else you have to bring along. Best practice is to reserve the chosen pocket for nothing other than the gun and holster, so that there are no obstructions if you have to access it. In addition, carrying in a rear pocket of trousers, jeans, or shorts can get uncomfortable very quickly. Now, it's been said that carrying a gun isn't supposed to be comfortable in the first place, and this is a fair assessment. One other thing that a pocket carry holster should do is come away from the gun as it is being drawn from the carry position. Some holsters do a better job of this than others. And there are two different ways this is accomplished in the modern pocket holster. The first is for the holster to have some sort of claw edge that catches on the inside of the pocket when drawing the pistol. With the proper draw motion, the holster will be left behind in the pocket. The second concept is to have the pocket holster surface closest to the gun as smooth as possible, while making the exterior surface that is in contact with the pocket to be as rough as possible so that the gun easily pulls away while the holster remains. And this brings to a close our video on the history and basics of pocket holsters. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you right back here soon on ranges, backstops, and berms.